Hello, welcome to my 31st October. I'm Lucky27, and this is a series of stories I have often told about my life. Today's story is entitled Alice, Lynne, Kathryn, and Jen. With Thanksgiving coming up, I thought I might talk a little about something that I am truly grateful for in my life, and that's my clients. Personally, I love what I do and therefore love anyone who lets me do it. Alice, Lynne, Kathryn, and Jen were amazing women that were easy to get attached to. They each had different personalities, they were different ages, and they had different schedules when seeing me. They were also the only 4 clients that I know of that died while I was seeing them. Alice started seeing me because of her son, Jim. Jim was a regular of mine and was Kathryn's father. He had started seeing me early in my career, and so he meant a great deal to me. I saw him for about 6.5 years before I moved out of that state. He had told me about his mother, who was in her 80s, and whose health was failing. He thought that having her see me might make her more comfortable as her health declined. They had given her until April of 2018 to live, but she had made it until September of that year before she actually passed. But Jim informed me at his next appointment that she was gone. Alice was a feisty lady. She had loads of wonderful stories to tell me at each session, and I was fond of her. She was kind and warm, and basically everything my grandmother hadn't been. She wasn't stuck on the things that had gone wrong in her life. Instead, she was thrilled at the idea of life and its quirks. I had always made sure her shoes were fastened properly, and that she had her cane before she would leave after every session, and those are the memories that I will always have of her. But the difference between Alice and the other 3 in this story is that I knew Alice wouldn't be around for a long time. Lynne, Kathryn, and Jen's deaths hit much harder for me, since they felt like family to me, and though Lynne's end was expected by the time she did pass, Kathryn and Jen's were complete shock and a horrible tragedy. Lynne was in her 60s, and she was like a mother to me. She was strong, fierce, full of life, and very kind. Lynne had started seeing me, I believe, somewhere in 2013. She and her best friend since high school used to come together to have their girl time every other week. It was their catch-up time. They would talk about everything and anything, and after a while, myself and a coworker of mine, who used to take care of Lynne's friend, would get roped into the conversations. Now, I don't advertise that I accept gifts from clients, but I do have clients that were very generous to me over the years, and Lynne was one of them. She found out one year that the backpack that I had used to carry my things to work was busted, and she bought me a new one. She would give me little keychain pendants or jewelry for my birthdays or Christmas. She was always trying to find ways to show me that she cared. After maybe 1.5 years of seeing me with her friend every other week, she started coming to see me by herself on the off weeks. She had so many interests, and we never had a lack of things to talk about. One time she came in with a gift bag of books for me to read. It was the 50 Shades of Grey series. She had asked me during our last session if I had read them, and I told her I hadn't. She then informed me that I needed to read them because apart from one of the characters having loads of money and the more racier moments the story had to offer, the relationship dynamic between the 2 lead characters were very similar to myself and my husband. I told her that I'd read them for her. It took me 4 days to read all 3 books, and that was only because I had to keep stopping for silly things like food, and water, and bathroom breaks, and sleep, and work. She had been right about the lead characters being very similar to myself and my husband. When I tried to hand the books back to her at the next week's appointment, she laughed and said that if I had liked them that much, that I should keep them. And I do still have them. She started feeling unwell somewhere in late 2015. After a while, she stopped seeing me altogether. Her friend then started taking Lynne's single appointments with me. She informed me that Lynne had a brain cancer remission, if I remember correctly. She kept me updated on everything every time I saw her. The last time I can remember having a connection with Lynne was when I asked her friend if I could send her a picture of my husband and I at our wedding, which was in late 2015, so that she could show Lynne, since I hadn't had the opportunity to show her any of our wedding pictures before she had gotten sick. She agreed and told me the next time she saw me that she had shown Lynne the picture, and even though Lynne couldn't talk and her face was kinda swelling, she had smiled fondly at the picture. Lynne passed away on the same day as my grandmother had, back in 2009, 5 days before my husband's birthday. Her friend had come in for our normal Monday appointment and informed me. I remember going to the break room and bawling my head off. My coworkers at the time, who knew what Lynne had meant to me, cried with me. I think that was probably one of the worst days I have ever had at work since starting my career. Until we lost Kathryn. Her father had suggested she come and see me after he had been seeing me about a year himself. Kathryn was a bright light in a sea of darkness. She was laid back, but full of energy. She was alive and one of the kindest women I have ever known. She was, I believe, older than me, and like a sister. I think she's the only client I've ever worked on that had a hangover at the time of the session. She was so funny and lighthearted, just like the rest of her family. She and I, just like her father and I, would spend our sessions talking about music and literature. She would tell me about her husband and her pets, who were her babies, and we always had a great time. She got cancer for the first time a couple of years before she died, and she beat it. But it did take a toll on her. When she developed a different cancer, we were all concerned, but she beat that one too. So it came as quite a shock when, just before Christmas of 2018, her father came in for his appointment and told me that Kathryn had died. She had been in the hospital and ended up with a septic infection of some kind. Her immune system just couldn't fight it, and she died just 3 months after her grandmother. I still, to this day, have no idea how Jim came in for that appointment, let alone told me about it so calmly. I don't normally hug my clients, but I did grab Jim. He had been through so much in such a short time, losing his mother and then his daughter. I remember keeping it together until I had left the room to let him get ready for the session. I made it to the break room and sobbed. Our wonderful front desk woman held me through that one. The world lost an amazing person that day. A lot has happened in my life and career after the loss of those 3 ladies. I moved away from that state, started my own private practice, the pandemic happened, I moved to another state, and I started working at a chiropractor's office while I worked on regaining a clientele. It was at that chiropractor's office that I met Jen. She was one of the front desk workers, and she was a character. Jen was friendly, sometimes loud, and very personable. After some time working there, she started coming to me as a client. We also began hanging out a little bit. We would go to a nearby coffee place or this Mexican restaurant to eat, or we would go to health and wellness expos together, and I even went over to her home once, just to hang out. She was an incredible artist, a mother of 2 sons, who I got to meet and work on, and lived with her mother, though she didn't live in the house. She lived in what she called her she shed in the backyard. She'd drive me home sometimes if I had something large or heavy that I needed transported, and would also give me rides back to my office from the chiropractor's office sometimes. She would put extra quarters in parking meters that she would use, because, as she used to say, you never know when the person that parks after you might be short a quarter or 2. That was the kind of person she was. She was like that black sheep aunt that was eccentric, but always there for you when you needed her. On August 3rd of 2023, I was waiting for my first client of the day to arrive, but about 10 seconds before my first client knocked on my door, I got a text message from the chiropractor telling me that Jen was found dead in the bathtub by her mother that morning. I had just enough time to read the message as I was opening the door for my client, and that poor woman got the full brunt of my unprofessionalism as my brain first processed the words I was reading, then as I went into shock, and then burst into tears. I had just talked with Jen the day before. I kept reading the message over and over, thinking maybe it was a different Jen he was talking about, as we knew a few. But then I texted her sister-in-law, who was also a client of mine, and she confirmed it. Over a year later, I still don't know what happened to her. The autopsy didn't find a reason for her death. She just stopped. I think of these women often. I still have all the gifts that Lynne gave me, and I have a bookcase that belonged to Alice in my home that Jim gave to me after she passed. I have 2 of Jen's paintings, as well as a large stuffed gnome that sits on my office desk. When we had gone to that health and wellness expo in February of the year she died, I had pointed out that specific gnome as the one that I would get for myself if I had the money. When my birthday came up in June, Jen took me to the Mexican restaurant we liked and gave me the gnome as a gift. She had gone back and bought him for me after she had taken me home that day. I had just thought of a name for him a few minutes before I got that text telling me she was gone. Kathryn lives on in my memory, as I have no keepsakes from her, but she is never forgotten. Remember, although you may never see the impact you leave on a person's life, you mean the world to someone. Alice left behind her son and her grandchildren. Lynne was survived by her husband and her friends. Kathryn had her parents, her brother, and her husband beside her. And Jen had her mother, her sons, her brother, and her sister-in-law. But they also left a place in my heart and mind as well. I will keep the memory of these fine ladies until I see them again. And that was the story of Alice, Lynne, Kathryn, and Jen. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the journey with me. I'm not sure how often I'll be posting something here, so leave a like, hit the subscribe button, and the bell, so you get updated when I do post. If you have questions or you want to know more about something I've said, please leave a comment and maybe I'll make a video explanation on the subject. But please be polite and courteous with the comments. My feelings don't get hurt, but the world has enough hate and judgment in it. It doesn't need yours on this video. If you think you know who I am, please don't leave a comment guessing my identity. Just send an email to the address in the description box. Thanks, and I'll see you when I see you.